All right, and we are back. Of course, it's Monday morning. It's the Spotlight. And in Spotlight, we just look at the pressing issues of the day, the issues that affect you day in, day out. So no surprise, the Minister of National Security has graced us with his presence to talk about what's happening within his ministry. But of course, if you've been paying attention, you would have known that the anti-gang legislation was passed in the upper house. Let's find out what's going to be happening or what has happened with it since that. So, Minister, good morning to you and welcome to the Now Morning Show.
Good morning, Natalie. Good morning, Now. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning, TTT.
Yes. How are you feeling?
Good, good. It was a good vibe in the studio before I came in. I was listening to all the uncle talk and this type of thing, and you all giving my partner some pressure about being a politician.
Yes, yes.
My advice is run.
Oh, Lord, Minister, don't discourage him. I mean, you are in it.
No.
But you know it's a profession of ingratitude, right?
You don't do it for the gratitude. I've learned that. That's for sure.
You can't because there's so much ingratitude. That's
Correct.
the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Minister, the anti-gang legislation, it's back on the cards. It got support in the upper house, not from the opposition bench, but from the independent senators and the government. So it was passed in the upper house. What happens after?
So, thankfully, and thanks to all of the independent senators and all of the right-thinking and civic-minded people in Trinidad and Tobago for supporting this legislation, it's the first step. So now we leave the Senate and we're going now to the lower house, to the House of Representatives. And let's see what the opposition does. I have been saying as the Minister of National Security, Natalie, that this legislation is absolutely necessary. We all recognize that all major countries in the world have gang problems. Trinidad and Tobago is absolutely no different. This legislation is very specific. The offenses under this legislation are all towards gangs. Harboring a gang member, preventing a person from leaving a gang, recruiting a person to a gang, being a gang member, being a gang leader. I took the time in the Senate to go through all of the offenses and show that they are specific. The opposition throws up a red herring every time. The red herring on this occasion was you don't need it because all gang-related activity is already covered. Gang-related activity is just a subsect. That is not what the gang legislation is for. So when you go to a schedule in the Act, it captures what can be captured as gang-related activity. Prostitution, trafficking in persons, white-collar crime, those types of things. About 50-something specific offenses under there. But that's not what this legislation is about. The legislation is targeting gangs. Is it the silver bullet? Everybody knows no piece of legislation is going to solve all of the crime. Yeah. But the police, the law enforcement or intelligence services, everyone who is dedicated in the fight against crime absolutely knows this is necessary. So we go to the lower house when it comes up for debate. We listen on. Of course, the government is pushing for it. The government has the majority votes. One of the unfortunate things is because we knew the opposition were not going to support, and they like this catchphrase. They have a couple catchphrases. Let me warn the population. We will support good law, but they never ever say in the debate, well, these are the amendments that will make it a good law. It's just one of those catchphrases. Let's throw it out there. So we go to the...
So they never say if they believe it's not good, what needs
correct.
to
And
be
then
changed.
they try to find, I mean, it was the same thing. We were in the House of Representatives on Friday on a very innocuous one-clause amendment to mutual legal assistance, which is to get us into the world of the global fight against crime, that a country reaches out to Trinidad, they want help in a criminal investigation taking place away, we can help them. Same thing, we reach out to them, they can help us in a criminal investigation here. And they just throw up these red herrings time and time again. So you just listen for the catchphrases. We're going to the lower house. Let's see what happens. The population has been calling out for justice. This is one of the things. We need the whole system to work. That's been my philosophy. Detection rates are up. Charging rates are up. And the police have been doing a better job. The intelligence have been helping us. The defense force have been helping as well. Now we're into the court system. I keep saying the lawyers have their job to do now. They get upset with me every time I raise it, but the lawyers have to do their job. Stop adjourning the matters, get on with it. The judiciary, you have the power. I keep saying the judges have the power. Set a trial. Natalie is for the prosecution, Stuart is for the defense. The judge tells us, I am going on with this trial next week, Wednesday. Hell or high water. You call it a preemptory fixture. And you know, if you don't turn up, the case is going to be dismissed. If I don't turn up, my client has the potential to to be convicted and this type of thing. And now we've put in place a system, the public defender system, that if I don't turn up as a defense attorney, the judge can appoint a public defense lawyer to proceed with it. Let's move forward. As someone was saying a short while ago, everybody is involved. It's very easy to blame the government, blame the politicians. That's the old catchphrase, but it's not helping anything. So I feel pretty good that as the government, we've been pushing hard. As the Minister of National Security, I know I have been giving it my all. And this anti-gang legislation is just one piece of the puzzle. It's just one piece of going forward, and hopefully going forward in the right direction in the fight against crime.
Well, the opposition is on record in the Parliament having a motion of no confidence against the Minister of National Security.
The first one, I was first up, yes.
You know, well, yes, and then there was Franklin Khan,
Correct.
And I think now who is
Column Imbert next, yes,
right.
Minister of Finance.
So they're doing some motions of no confidence against particular government ministers. And one of the things that they raised in that is that, you know, nothing has really happened. That things that were spoken about in budgets past are things that are still not sorted out, so to speak. And I think one of the examples they gave was it was something to do with the prisons. Do forgive me if my memory isn't the best at this time, but they always keep saying that, you know, so 2018 when you became Minister of National Security, here are some of the things that you outlined, and you know, a lot of them is like you're still talking about them in 2020, 2021. Do I have it accurately correctly?
Yeah, I think one of the contributors from the opposition raised that there is some validity to the point. So let me thanks for that opportunity, because I was actually screaming last week at the ministry about some of these things. As a minister, what you do is you direct policy. So you look at the overall landscape in national security. Let's use prisons as the example. I came in, did some tours of the prisons, maximum security. Okay, we need an alarm system, we need CCTV, we need to introduce technology. Technology, always correct, always assist. So I go to cabinet. That's my role as Minister of National Security. I get the consensus, I go to cabinet, I take a cabinet note, I persuade my colleagues to allow this to happen. My colleagues sign off on it, so cabinet says yes. It now gets into the system at the public service. They now have to create a scope, create a RFP, go out for tender, evaluate the tender, award the contract. The lawyers have to negotiate the contract. Sometimes it can get a little frustrating. I keep telling them they're not moving. We're not moving quickly enough. And then, of course, the minister can't get involved. I do not get involved in any contractual arrangement whatsoever. Yeah. So I'm waiting for it to come out of this pipeline, trying to push it along, always asking permanent secretaries, other members of staff, where has it reached? So with the particular one that was in the news last week, the CCTV, I was shocked to learn after I took it to cabinet, it got approved in 2019, and I know COVID has a role to play. It is now, they're still negotiating the terms of the contract. I was a lawyer. It doesn't take long to negotiate the terms of a contract. But that is where these things get stuck.
Do you believe that the public servants within the system are stymieing the efforts of the Ministry of National Security?
I don't believe they're stymieing the efforts. I believe sometimes, and this is a conversation I've been having in the past few months with them, because they're nameless, faceless persons, and it always comes down to, you know what, is the minister, and the minister is the face out there. It's easy. I am the bulletproof vest for everything that goes on there. So I am the one attracting all of the shots. People just need to be more conscientious. They need to do their work. I don't think they're doing it deliberately. I would hate to think so. I hope they're not. They have my support. I keep telling them that. I tell the police service all of the time. Once you all act within the parameters of the law, I will go out and defend you. If anyone is not acting within the parameters of the law, you're on your own, and the full brunt of the law should be directed towards you.
It's funny that you raised that, because I'm going to deviate a little bit, because I'm thinking of the two suspects in Andrea Barrett's murder who were literally beaten to death in police custody based on the autopsy reports. Even if in the absence of an investigation, can we say that police officers in that instance are operating within the remit of the law?
Natalie, if police officers are not operating within the remit of the law, exactly as I just said, let the full brunt of the law be placed on them. What I did there, and I always have to be cautious as a politician, as a minister, is the first thing people like to scream is political interference. Call in the Commissioner of Police and his 3 deputy commissioners of police spoke to them, told them, as the government, we're very concerned about what we've seen go on here, what is happening. We were immediately assured that there were 3 investigations taking place. Internally in the police system, there's the Professional Standards Bureau, which is supposed to be like the internal affairs unit.
Yeah.
They were getting assistance from homicide and other arms of the police service in the divisions that these deaths took place, and then the Police Complaints Authority. I took the time, I had a whole press conference to go through the law with the Police Complaints Authority. That is a body set up under the law that is an independent institution and has all of the powers it needs to conduct this investigation. I called the director of the Police Complaints Authority, asked him, Mr. West, are you all pursuing an investigation? He assured me they were. And that's it, I backed out. And I just say, I am looking on, like the rest of the population. No one is above the law.
But
that's one of my mantras.
Can you afford to just look on, though? Because when I think of even the PCA, the last time I had an interview with the director, David West, I think one of the things that I got out of that interview is that a lot of times investigations don't reach anywhere, or they take years to get anywhere because, one, they might be waiting on medical reports, or they might be waiting on ballistic, or they might be waiting on something from the police service. And there are people within the system fully understanding this that in my mind are just as timing the efforts of these investigations. So what we end up with is somebody dies in police custody or in a police shooting and absolutely nothing happens because it just gets lost in translation.
So what you have to do, what comes to mind, which is another mantra, where there's a will, there's a way. So everybody needs to push. I took the time to have a press conference to go through the sections of the Police Complaints Authority for this particular incident to show that they have sufficient power. They must drive the process. If they're hitting a brick wall, my view is, come out and tell the population. Say, Trinidad and Tobago, look, I'm investigating this, I've hit a brick wall here. I'm not getting the ballistics report. You mentioned ballistics. That's another thing. When I came in, I said ballistics cannot take this long. You can build out a ballistic database because every ballistic, every spent shell has a fingerprint on it. The striker that hits the shell is unique. Every firearm striker is unique. I am happy to say that I can leave the job today, and that has been done. The police now have their own ballistics recovery unit. You would have heard the Commissioner of Police say, look, 7,000 backlog, etc. When I inquired why, they're saying there's a backlog at forensics. I said, well, why doesn't the police have its own unit? We pushed, they got that done. So the police now have their own ballistics recovery unit. Reached out to the United Kingdom, we brought down a specialist, and a few weeks ago, they finally had another course in building out the ballistic intelligence. So if there's a crime here in Belmont, there's a crime in Diego Martin, over 2 different periods, they pick up the shells, the shell goes into the database, wait, it's the same shell. Then you pick up Stuart Young in Port of Spain 2 months from now with that firearm. I'm linked to those 2 crimes, so I have to have a good explanation as to why me and my illegal firearm was not the person that carried out those 2 crimes. So these are the steps being made. It's not talk, it's happening, and that's what I keep pushing for. Less talk. You'll realize how many times of you ask me, come on, I don't, because I prefer to just sit quietly, get the work done, and let the results speak for itself. It's not about the minister. It's about getting the work done.
And Minister, I'm not discounting that you're working, but the reality is that for me as a woman, we know we have issues in the society with gender-based violence. And, you know, we've seen, like, if I'm to look at national security holistically, as a woman, as a non-national, as somebody who lives there, the first thing I ask myself, where am I mentally? Do I feel safe? And the answer is no. I can be frank with you. I don't feel safe, regardless of all the things that might be happening. So what are we missing that we can get to that place of comfort where we can say, okay, I can walk out the road and I can be comfortable? Because when I have to, every morning when I have to leave home, I live like a pirate. I've been looking left, right, because I just don't have that comfort that, you know, things are okay.
And Natalie, that can't be discounted. I mean, that is something I'm very, very conscious of because many people talk about it. So the first thing is, I am not burying my head in the sand. Legislation is one piece, so we've been pushing for the legislation. The next thing is it needs to be operationalized. working with the police service, working with our intelligence services. If we know, I'm fed up of persons saying, well, we know they are a gang. We know they are engaged in criminal activity. And that's the intelligence level. Well, let's get it at evidential level. And if even you can't get it, do disruptive things. I don't want to speak too much about the operational side, but there are ways you can just disrupt. And apply technology. So some of the things that we're working on from a technology point of view, and I hope to see the Ministry of Works come with, for example, with the whole public transport system. I mean, it's some great concepts, some great ideas. I met with the Minister of Works and his team, the Attorney General, the Commissioner of Police a few weeks ago. And one of the things we're aiming to do, everybody has a smartphone. So for the women who have to travel, we're going to regulate that vehicles who want to operate, you don't want to be a full-time taxi, okay, you operate like the equivalent of an Uber or what we call PH, but it can't be PH because we're not going to endorse illegality. They must all be regulated. They'll have a QR code on their car. They have to have a GPS on the car. When they're driving, taking passengers is activated. So we have a system where we're tracking all of the cars. Anybody getting into the car, before you get in, you flash the QR code. You see, okay, the people licensed to drive that are Natalie Unshort. You look at it and say, but that's not Natalie Unshort. You don't go in the vehicle. You could send a message automatically to your family members or your friends. Okay, this is the vehicle I'm getting into. The police, the Ministry of Works and Transport tracking. So that exists, and that's the road we want to get to. And I'm hoping that we get there as quickly as possible. And it has to be a whole of government approach. I was having a conversation with the Minister of Education on Friday, I believe, at the Parliament. We have a vibrant Minister of Education. I was saying, Nyan, primary schools, can we please get what the Prime Minister tells us used to be civics, which is just teaching young children what is right and what is wrong, what is ethical, what is moral, because we can no longer count on that happening at home. Because we know how it is. It might be a single mother who's pulling 3 jobs and the child doesn't have that guidance. I'm not blaming anyone. We need to look for and it has to be that, I don't like the cliche term, that whole of government, but if you start doing these things, hopefully it will make the difference. Because
when do you think we'll be able to see that difference? Because what you're suggesting to me is that as a minister, you are looking at the legislation. We've seen certain pieces of legislation come to the Parliament. We are seeing where you're trying to operationalize things and, you know, put in the technology in. But when do you think we'll get that holistic feel of, okay, something is shifting?
That's a $1 million question. I can't put a timeline on that. I mean, all I could do as being part of the system and only a small cog in it is push as hard as I can to get there. But Natalie is a global phenomenon. You look at what's going on. You look at what's going on in the richest country in the world, the United States. And I keep telling people over the last few months, I think people are missing what is going on in the world, you know. They had insurrectionists storm the United States Capitol. That's the House of Parliament. I looked at that thing live on television. And I think I understood the ramifications of what that means. When you kind of marry that to, if they storm the House of Parliament in Jamaica or in Trinidad, life, it doesn't go back to normal. And you're seeing these things. In the past week, one of the things that's bothered me, the past year, let's start with the Black Lives Matter and what we saw going on in the United States. Now, attacks on Asian Americans. So I'm looking at what's going on in the globe. You look at what's going on in Europe, a set of protests and these types of things. A paradigm is shifting. We have to hold it together in the CARICOM. We are different people. We are unique people. We mustn't follow the bad things. And we must just continue to try and push for what's right. One last point on that. And COVID put a stop to it. The Prime Minister is very big on, in national security, there's a mental side of it, all right, the mental wellness side. Why are persons reacting so violently? What's going on in the region? Why are persons reacting so violently? Let's get some experts in to start that conversation and tackle it. So we're not looking at it in one-dimensional way. Right. You know, it's tackle it legislation, tackle it with technology, tackle it with through the education system, tackle it through the mental health system, and these types of things. And hopefully, Natalie, if you just keep putting that amount of pressure on it, something gives in the right direction. But in the meantime, I come back to what can we as individuals do. Safety of women and children of vulnerable in society is paramount.
Right.
Let's start each man by respecting women. Just giving you that safe environment. You walk out the house, you're into a zone of respect. And then let's take it from there.
Well, I really hope we can get there. But when you talk about, not being PH, that, trying to regularize these things, how do you regularize something that's already illegal? Which is
my point. I agree with you.
Right. How do you regularize it? Isn't it still, why should I, as a H driver, have to go through all of these steps and situations to ensure that I can carry passengers, but somebody else can just come and, we kind of certify them that it's okay to take shortcuts.
And that is one of the main issues with what exists now. Because those who are H drivers, who have followed the law to T, done what they're supposed to do, they shouldn't be penalized or disadvantaged in any way whatsoever. So what you're basically doing is you're saying, okay, this is going to be an existing parallel system for persons who want to temporarily transport people, because you also have to amend the legislation on the insurance law side. And you're now giving people an opportunity to legalize themselves. They're not going to be more advantaged than the H taxis or legal taxis. You're creating and whoever doesn't come in that will now charge them and prosecute them. Unfortunately, this is what happens when you allow a horse to bolt and another horse to bolt, and then before you know it, all of the horses have bolted. How do you now pull it back? You can't just throw up your arms, so you look for these types of solutions. And once we introduce that system, then you have to prosecute those who are outside of the system.
Minister, I don't know where the time goes when we're having these conversations, but two things I wanted to speak with you about, and it's the illegal Venezuelans in the country and the re-registration of those who were here before, and as well as the Trinbagonian citizens who are still locked outside of the countries. Let's start with the Venezuelans, because we heard of even, I think it was 2 nights ago, where 25 Venezuelan women were caught with a Nigerian man and a Trinidadian man, coming into the country. So obviously we are still talking of borders that are not as secure as they probably need to be. And we keep somehow repeating, and I think this is where I'll have to agree with the opposition, repeating the story of vessels and what vessels we're supposed to have and not have, but somehow we still getting people coming in. And I understand the dynamic, I really do, of how, somebody can cross those borders, how short, the nautical miles are, how easy it might be to go through two checkpoints and stuff. I understand all of that. But even outside of that, do you really believe that if we had sufficient vessels, if we had the kind of patrolling that's needed, that would be having this kind of intervention, this kind of illegal entry all the time? Because it seems pretty often.
Let me say, first of all, I do think it was 25 Venezuelans, but the number is insignificant. It's a concept, right? Venezuelans came in. Immediately when I got that report, I said, make sure and charge the persons who are involved in, at minimum, human smuggling. I said, until they start to feel it, and I say, seize their boat. The legislation is there in place, it's proceeds of crime, seize their vessels. Yeah. It is impossible to lock down every single nautical mile that exists out there. I took the media out on one of our vessels, the Coast Guard vessels, to sea. And from a 7-mile journey happens in a matter of minutes. So even when the radar picks it up to intercept. Can we do with more assets? The answer is always yes. So right now, again, I went to Cabinet, got approval for 4 new interceptors. We have the 2 Cape-class vessels coming. Will that completely lock down? The answer is no. You see it in every country in the world. I look at United Kingdom, who have all of the resources. They have a navy, they have a coast guard, they have every. People still get across the channel. You see it in the Bahamas. You see it even in Jamaica. Persons coming from Haiti and these areas. It is extremely difficult. We just have to keep at it. The Coast Guard have up their game. We have joint forces taking place, the multi-agencies, the radar system, we've upgraded it, and these types of things. People still manage to sneak through. We just have to deal with it.
I saw something for the first time the other day too, and for me, I thought it was a step in the right direction where Venezuelans were being repatriated. They were choosing to go back home.
Correct.
What changed? What happened?
Well, and that's a good point. if things are so awful and things are so bad, why would Venezuelans be choosing of their own volition to go back home? So what you saw is a repatriation flight. Before that, there was repatriation on a vessel. We took them to a point. Venezuelan authorities picked them up. And that is a shift as well. For Venezuelans to choose of their own volition, okay, I'm ready to go home. And I've been signing off on a number of these things with Venezuelan migrant registration cards. Persons who are saying, look, right, I'm going back home, I don't need this anymore, so I cancel it, and this type of thing. So you're seeing some of that. We are also continuing with our deportation exercises because it can't be a free-for-all. People can't say, right, well, just head across to Trinidad, you could live there illegally. So when we hold people, we are deporting, etc. We went through, you remember a few months ago, all of the battles in the court system with people trying to prevent us from using the law that exists, etc. So that continues. That is a struggle that continues. We do the best we can. We should get the 2 Cape-class vessels this year. That will help. We're ordering and pushing them hard again to get these 4 new interceptors. You don't just go and pick it up off a shelf. That should help. But you have to again hit to the heart. This is human trafficking. It's human smuggling going on. So we have some operations going on where they're focused on some of the persons who may be key in those areas. I'm hoping to see that come to fruition. And
the registration. We don't seem to be getting the numbers. The
Correct.
People aren't coming out to register.
So that's something I'm going to be discussing with the public service this week. The numbers have begun to pick up marginally, but there's not the amount that I expected. And I'm not surprised by that because understand is putting an envelope in a box. You don't know how many registration forms, re-registration forms are in an envelope, etc. I also think one of the things that was lost in translation is we said, get a job letter from your employer. That is not mandatory. So let me use the opportunity here. We accept if you don't have a job, and there are going to be some employers that don't want to give you a job letter, that does not stymie you from re-registering. So it's not mandatory. We want it for information gathering purposes. If you can't get it, you still have to re-register because at the end of this exercise, if you haven't re-registered, you're now illegal and subject to deportation.
Right. And Minister, the government, in my mind, did a fantastic job in trying to handle the pandemic, but it came at a cost. And the cost is for those nationals who are left outside of our borders. Why is it even at this time that the government has not changed its approach to treating with its own nationals to get them home?
What do you mean the government hasn't changed? That the borders continue to be closed?
The borders are closed, but I mean, if you recognize that the system can only hold, let's say, 150 people at a time, why not build out that system so that we can accommodate more nationals to come home? Because I'm trying to figure out what it must be like for a national being stuck anywhere where it doesn't want to be for that extended period of time, for a year or more. And for some people, that's the reality.
Well, I am not certain for some people that's the reality. All right? As I've said repeatedly, there are categories of persons. Those who were genuinely went away before March of last year and found themselves caught at the closure of a border, meaning they went for a few weeks vacation, etc. That's been cleared. What you now have are persons who are accustomed going away. So they will go away, visit family, spend 6 months or 8 months, time to come home. That is being, that category of persons is being cleared. But let me tell you something, and I look at the statistics on a daily basis. I call for reports on a daily basis. Every single plane that leaves Trinidad, people leaving on it. So quite a lot of people who are outside now, nationals, are persons who've left within the last few weeks, the last few months, gone away, and now come in. I mean, I get some ridiculous, in my view. The borders are closed. We've asked persons, stay in place. But you have a lot of persons, and these are not the ridiculous ones, who have green card issues. So they fly out for their green card. Of course, they want to turn around and come back home. I have had some persons say, well, look, I had vacation, so I went out, but my vacation ending next week. I need to come home. But okay, but hold on. What about those who went out for medical issues and have to come home? To answer your specific question, we have introduced more resources in the system, but you always have to count on, suppose now there's an outbreak, can our public health system or parallel public health system for COVID handle it? So if you have 600 persons who have come home to be quarantined, God forbid something breaks out, those 600 is the super variant, etc. Can that now can those persons move into a public health care system, the parallel system, without collapsing it, understanding. I mean, right now we're seeing a little bit of an uptick with the numbers in the past few days, all right, of persons testing positive for COVID. So these are the balancing factors, and we're not unique in that. You look at what's going on in Australia, for example, the almighty Australia. They have a similar system, and it's the same type of strain. The difference is everybody coming home has to pay for quarantine. We still have state quarantine where some persons don't have to pay for it, but we've added on facilities where people can pay for quarantine, state supervised quarantine. We've expanded it, the flights have increased, etc. But you're also dealing with the danger of the various variants that exist out there, etc.
I have spoken to people who have been outside and come back, and they say that the system that's in place is very cumbersome, it's very bureaucratic, it's very discouraging. It's almost as if the government doesn't want them to come back home.
Well, that's not true. And I mean, the online system is up and running now for the last few months. It's much more efficient. But the numbers you're still seeing, because a lot of those persons are persons on planes who've jumped, left within the last few weeks, and now want to turn around and come home. So the clearance, as you're clearing, more being added to the line and the queue. And right now, it is a pillar of our COVID response and how we're dealing with COVID. That's why you see us still a huge, we're the second largest Caribbean country at 1.4 million people, still have very low numbers compared to some of our CARICOM colleagues who people say, well, why are you not like country X, why are you not like country Y, their borders aren't, and you're seeing what is it. That is one of our pillars of how we respond to it, is keeping persons in Trinidad safe. As we said, from day one, that was a priority for the government, and we continue to manage it. It's not something we want to be doing.
Minister, we are out of time, but I want to thank you so much for being with us on the Now Morning Show, and we look forward to this thing coming together so that we can start feeling safe. All right, the Minister of National Security here with us, the Honorable Stuart Young. We're going to break for the newscast. Thank you all so much, and remember, you can send those messages to 326-7285. We take that break.
Patrice